Ah, well, at Bethesda last time, or earlier today, we had reached the tabernacle, the wanderings of the people of Israel in the wilderness, and the tabernacle. And here we are a little bit earlier in the story. From the beginning, we learned about how God had created all things, and in His love preparing all things for the humans that He was to create. But He gave them a choice, as all love requires choice. He gave them a choice to trust Him or to not trust Him, to love Him or not love Him. And the people, they failed this choice. They chose to believe the lie. And so because of this, they received the punishment of God, the curse, death, separation from God. But they also received a promise of one who would come and defeat the plans of Satan. And he also, you notice that one of the first things that God did after punishing them, He also provided a way to cover the result of their sin, cover their bodies that they were now ashamed of because of their sin. So He killed an animal and clothed them with the skins of it. And we learned also about their children. When they were sent out of the garden, they could not return, but they ended up living outside of the garden, outside of that blessed place. And then they had children, and their children followed after them. The older and ended up killing the younger brother. And instead of listening to God's advice, and instead of admitting what he had done, he tried to hide what he'd done. So he ended up being thrown out of the garden. But God had not forgotten His plans. So they had more children, and through those children, they had ones that did follow God, did respect Him. But as we find that the custom of people is, they have the sin nature in them. They continue to have this bent away from God. The people began to go further and further away from God to the point where God judged them as having evil in their hearts all the time. And the whole thing was corrupt, evil. So He decided to get rid of it. But He found one person who trusted Him. And so, as God does, He finds a way of salvation. He made a way of salvation for those who trust Him. He saves those who trust Him. And so He saved the one person who did trust Him and his family, Noah and his family. There were 8 people in all. He had him build an ark, and through that, saved his family. So then after that, only 8 people, the 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, from them, the number of people on the earth increased quite a bit. But again, they began to wander away from God and forgot about who He was and decided to make their own way to God or gods. And so they built this huge tower and a city, and they were going to make a way to reach to the heavens. But God wasn't impressed. So He scattered them, foiled their plan, scattered them. And so then there they are, scattered because of their many languages, French and English and Tagalog and all the other languages. I don't know the Nigerian languages, but whatever they're called, there are a number of them. So they scattered into the different regions of the world. And again, from that point, the people began to forget about God. So God chose one man. They had many gods. God chose one man from Ur of the Chaldees. His name was Abraham, Abram at that time. And God chose him. He said, go to a land that I will show you, and I will bless you, and I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. And through you, or through your offspring, all the people of the earth will be blessed. So Abraham believed God. He was 75 years old at that time, and God said that he would increase the number of his descendants on the earth to the point that they would not be able to be counted. But at that point, the problem was Sarah did not have any children. She was barren. But they left. He believed God. Well, the problem is she was 65 years old. He's 75 years old now. The hope is dwindling. But they left. They and their nephew, Lot. So they left and went to the place that God had shown them. And when they arrived there, they offered a sacrifice to God, a sign that they trusted him and that they worshiped him. And after that, then God said, well, go out and I will give you and to your descendants this land that you see here. So Abraham went, and God did bless him, just like he'd said. He began to increase in wealth, and he had more manservants and maidservants, and the number of his flocks increased, his flocks and herds, and his camels and donkeys and all the other kinds of things, and he had lots of gold and silver, and he was doing very well. Well, his nephew Lot was also doing well, because God was also blessing him. The trouble was they were living in an arid area in the land of Canaan, up in the plateau areas, perhaps Hebron and down further south from there, up in the flat area that didn't have that much rain or plant growth there. And so the problem was, as their herds increased, well, they have to have something to eat. And so they were having a hard time finding enough water and food for their animals. So the herdsmen of Lot and the herdsmen of Abraham began to quarrel among themselves, started to fight about who should get the water and everything. So Abram says, Lot, let's separate. It's not good that we fight amongst ourselves. Let's separate. You go one way and I'll go the other way. And he let Lot decide which way. So Lot looked around, and he saw down in the valley, the area near around what they call the Dead Sea these days, or the Salt Sea. And I've been there, and it is today it's not a very lush vegetation place. But back then it was. It had a lot of vegetation down there, and there were people already living there. And Lot chose that for himself, the best for me. So he went down there, but the trouble was that the people in that area were sinning against God. They were doing things that were displeasing to God. God didn't like what they were doing. And people around them began to complain to God about them. Now, Lot didn't just go down to settle down there. He went toward a certain city whose name was Sodom. Now, around that time that Lot went down in there, Abraham was 99 years old. And you remember what happened around that time? God had said, your number will increase so that they're like the stars in the heavens that can't be counted. The number of your descendants will increase as well. Well, Abraham heard that, and they had already come up with a plan. Him and Sarah had come up with a plan to have children. Not children through Sarah, but she had a maidservant whose name was Hagar. And so she said, take my maidservant and have children through her, and then I will adopt them, basically. Hagar didn't get much out of this situation. But, and he agreed. Well, it didn't really turn out very well because this was not God's plan. God had not said through Sarah. No, he didn't say through Hagar. He said through Sarah. Through your descendants, through Sarah. So that didn't turn out very well. They ended up with some disagreements, shall we say, disrespect of Hagar toward Sarah, and they ended up having problems there, relational problems. But now Abram was now 99 years old. And God said, I'm going to bless you and bless your descendants after you. He says, well, good. God said, your wife, Sarah, is going to give you a child. And Abram laughed. Like, right. She's now 89 years old and she's going to have a child. Then Abram is looking up. He's out in the middle of the day, and it's very hot there in the desert. And he's under this tree for shade. And 3 people approach him. 3 what look like men approach him. And he says, oh, Sarah, quick, bake some bread. And it's a lot of bread. I forget exactly how many kilos of flour they're going to use. And he rushes off to one of his herdsmen and he says, go take that fatted calf, a really good calf there, and prepare a meal from it. And then they come there and he gives them a meal. You remember from last time? And while they're sitting there and eating, then God starts to speak. One of them apparently is God because he says, Lord. Abraham is calling him Lord. He says, Sarah, a year from now, your wife is going to have a child. And Sarah laughs. Yeah, at this old age, I'm going to have this pleasure? And I don't know if it was out loud, but God says, why did Sarah laugh? Is anything impossible for me? I didn't laugh. She's got afraid. Trying to hide. Again, very human. And God says, yes, you did laugh. But this is going to happen. Now, here's the part that I didn't cover last time. So, after they're done with all this conversation, then they get up to leave. And the 2 that are along with God, apparently, are angels. They go off on their way, and Abram is left alone there with God. And apparently God had shown himself in a physical form. And God says to Abram, I'm not going to hide from you what I am planning to do, because I have heard about the wicked things that the people in Sodom are doing. And so therefore, I'm going to go and check it out. And Abram knows, uh-oh. My nephew Lot is down there in Sodom. We've got a problem here. And he says, Lord, I know he's going to appeal to God's nature, right? Lord, you are a just judge. You would never do anything that's wrong. So if there are like 50 people that are good people, righteous people in that city, then would you say you would never mix in your judgment the righteous with the wicked, treating them equal, would you? So if there are 50, would you still destroy the city? God says, no. For the sake of the 50, I would not destroy the city. Well, Lord, now that I've been so bold as to say this, how about if there are just 45? Would you still destroy them for the sake of the 45 missing? And God says, no, not for 45. Well, then he barters. He barters. Now, how about 40? How about 30 and 20? And one last time, God keeps saying, no, for that sake of that many people. One last time, what if there are only 10? Would you destroy the city? And God said, if I find 10 there that are righteous, then I will not destroy the city for their sake. So Abraham is probably thinking, in a city of that size, there has to be 10. Well, so these two angels arrived in Sodom in the evening. This is in chapter 19 of Genesis. And Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. Lot kept coming closer and closer. Now he's this important person in the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. He's a nice guy. He's hospitable. This is what a righteous person does. Just like here in the Faroe Islands or there in the Philippines or wherever I have lived, people, maybe not so much in America, they might invite you out to McDonald's or something, but here or in the Philippines or in Indonesia, here, come have something to eat. No, we'll spend the night in the square. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him. I mean, like with the Filipinos, if they say, oh, come, eat with us, and you don't you don't say yes for the first time. You always, a couple times, 2, 3 times, maybe after 3 times, they're serious, So, yeah, they do have enough food to share. But he's being very insistent. Insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast. Of course, bread with yeast takes more time so he's in a rush. Bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so that we can have, shall I say it in a better way? So that we can go to bed with them? Lot went outside and to meet them and shut the door behind them. No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters. This is really sad. Oh my goodness. I cannot imagine myself as a father doing this. But he's going to offer his daughters instead. Well, in their culture, if someone came under your roof, you had to protect them. That it was an obligation. So he was doing everything he knew to do. Anyway, but don't do anything to these men because they've come under the protection of my roof. Get out of our way, they replied. And they said, this fellow came here as an alien and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men that were outside the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find the door. Here's a picture or an illustration of this. So they couldn't find the door. So I will make it a little bit shorter after this. So the men, or the angels that is, that are on the inside, they say, Quick, if there are any that you know in the town, any that belong to you, then tell them so that they can escape this. So Lot has 2 daughters, and the 2 daughters are engaged to be married to these 2 Sodom people. And so Lot rushes to them, having compassion for them. He doesn't want them to suffer the same fate of everyone else around them. So he tries to reason with them and say, come with me, we have to escape this. And they thought he was joking. I don't know, maybe he was a joker. Maybe he was that way. This was no joke. And so they didn't believe him. Now, he kept on reasoning and reasoning, trying to push that on them, and it wasn't going anywhere. And now it's starting to get toward morning. So the angels, they said, quick, come now, leave. Otherwise, you will join the rest in their fate. So when he continued to dawdle, that is, be too slow, then they took him by the hands. The angels took Lot and his wife and 2 daughters by the hands and pulled them out of the city. Come quickly, run away into the mountains, away from this, so that this does not overtake you, because God is going to destroy this city. And Lot says, I can't do it. I'm sure that I won't make it to the mountains before this happens. So can I just go to that little place, Zoar? Zoar means little. This little village. It's just a little place. Can I just go there? And God says, sure. The angels say, sure. But go quickly. Go quickly. Because we can't do anything until you are safe. And we won't destroy that town, Zoar. So they ran. And the angel said, don't look behind you. Run, don't look behind you. So they ran. And as the sun was coming up, they ran, and they reached to the small town of Zoar, or village. And when they reach the village, then they hear it. God rained down fire and brimstone, that is like sulfurous rocks, down. Have you ever been around sulfurous rocks that are burning? Well, you wouldn't be around for very long if you were right beside it. You can smell them. They smell really bad. And if they're burning, it is extremely dangerous. It will burn you. And they burned it down. Those cities were burnt down to ashes. Nothing was left. Plants, animals, humans, it was all gone. It was all gone. Nothing left. But Lot's wife, she looked behind her. She turned around and looked. And that was the end. She turned into a pillar of salt. Now, if you've been to that area in Israel by the Dead Sea, you will see lots of glittering stuff among the stones. That is salt. There is a lot of salt in that area. And in fact, that's part of the reason that the Dead Sea is so salty, because there is a lot of salt there. And whenever it rains, which isn't very often, but when it rains, some of that salt is brought into there, and the water gets evaporated. So it becomes very, very salty. She became a pillar of salt. So Lot was saved. Lot trusted God. Now, God had said, if I find 10 people that are righteous, I will not destroy the city for their sake. Did he find 10? Did he find? Well, the question is, did he even find 4? Did he even find 4? Lot was saved. His 2 daughters were saved. But were they even righteous? Lot perhaps was. We see it later in the book of Hebrews, I believe it was, where his name is mentioned, and he was a righteous man. His wife didn't trust the angels and looked behind her and was judged. He couldn't save his own wife. And so it's true that no one can save even their closest family members. Each one has to make that decision themselves. Are they going to trust? Are they going to believe or not? Lot's wife didn't make it. The sad thing is they go off, and they didn't stop in the town of Zoar, but ran off because he was still afraid. God had said he wasn't trusting the Lord quite enough. He was afraid. He was traumatized perhaps by what had happened. He was afraid that something would happen to him even there in Zoar. So he ran off into the mountains. And there, after a while, his daughters gave up any hope of finding husbands, and they found a way with their father. So, apparently, not even they were righteous. So, the older daughter, she gets pregnant by her father. Not his idea, but she gets pregnant by her father, and she names her son Moab, which means of my father. What a shameful thing. Incest. And then names the son to remind the rest of their lives what had happened, how he had begun. And the younger daughter did the same, and she had a son and named him Ben-Ami, which means of my people or of my relatives, which was kind of another reference to the same thing. Sad, sad story. God is righteous. God will judge. And yet, he will save those people who put their trust in him. He saved Lot out of that place, even though Lot had been tempted into siding, into being with, kind of a part of those cities. He'd saved him. God will save those who put their trust in him. And I think God was not surprised by what happened to his daughters, what they did. He was so gracious to Lot that his daughters also were saved, even though they were not righteous. And so the story goes on with their family lines, the Ammonites and the Ammonites and Moabites. Later on, that goes on into a lot of the biblical history that we see later. Sad story, but two things we can learn and stress in this. God is righteous. He will judge. He was very patient. This had happened over a long period of time. God had seen this. God had seen the kind of violence and the disgusting things that they were doing, those people in those places. God had had plenty of patience. Just like in the times of Noah, God gave them 120 years to repent. Noah continued to warn the people. They would not listen. Now Lot is warning his sons and potential sons-in-laws, and they would not listen. And so they also ended up being burned up with all the others. Now, some people would say this sounds like a made-up story. We've been there at the Dead Sea. The southern end of the Dead Sea is a lot more shallow than the rest of the Dead Sea, and I have not seen it myself. It's kind of hard actually to do any diving under there because your body floats so well. But for the people who have done the diving, they have actually seen some of these charred remains, not perhaps of people, but of buildings and plants and other things. So these are real things. There were towns, and there's still evidence of what happened there. And the salt is a good reminder of those who do not put their trust in God. So God will save those who put their trust in him. But he will also, he has a limit to his patience. And he will judge people. He will warn. He will give them an opportunity to repent, but he will judge when they do not. That is sad. And that is not what we want to happen, and that's not what God wants to happen either. And that's why we spread this news, so that everyone can come to a relationship with him and put their trust in him. Thank you. That's it for today.